The Federal and City Union Bank jointly present the Tanjavur Marathon 2025 on Sunday, February 23. This event is powered by Sri Kamachi Medical Center and Anandam Silks and organized by Tanjavur District Athletics Association.
Hello and welcome to Culture Vibes, the Federal's special program in which we talk to writers and artists about their work. Joining me today is a very special guest, Grammy nominated singer Radhika Vekaria, whose album Warriors of Light was nominated for the Grammy Award this year. This is her second album. Her first album, Sapta, The 7 Days, came out in 2020. Radhika, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time out.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
So first of all, Radhika, let's just talk about Warriors of Light. It comes 4 years after your first album. And what does this nomination sort of mean for you?
Well, I've been making music for a while, but I hadn't really made a lot of albums under my own name because I was asked for many years to record mantra-inspired music, and I never felt fully ready to do that. You know, I had to really make that decision seriously. And so for the second album that I did, which is very much rooted and inspired by, you know, the Vedas and our deep Indian culture where my grandparents come from, it feels still surreal, to be honest. It hasn't really sunk in. But it's just so beautiful because I just feel like it honors where my family comes from, the deep wisdom of the Vedas. It's such a rich culture and history and philosophy, and I'm just very happy to play a small, humble part in steering this into this time in our world.
Right, and the title of the album itself is very instructive in a way that it's the light of a lot of things that you want to spread. Of course, healing is one of them, but this growing realization that these chants and mantras, ancient ones, how they're relevant even today and how they can act in the process of healing, as it has worked for yourself in many ways.
Yes, I mean, for me, they really helped fortify my mind. I was, I think all of us, even if we have some kind of rich traditions or sadhana practice, we still have things in life that make us realize we need to get stronger. We need to get mentally stronger. And for me, mantras were always with me since I was a child, but I realized their profound importance and impact as I got older. And I never sing or speak about anything other than what I have lived and experienced with. Like I don't believe in speaking about things I haven't lived and breathed with myself. And so these mantras, every single mantra that is in Warriors of Light is something that has held me, something that has supported me, something that has helped me as somewhat of an anchor to what is really true when the winds are blowing in life, And I think that we all are called upon to kind of cultivate and have our inner warrior step forward. And we have these tools and we have these ancient systems that help us be able to do that. And that's really where this album came from.
I wanted to ask you if about the conception of the album, how sort of you conceived it, and how did these different 9 tracks took shape? All of them are, of course, about invocations to different gods, and also in a way, so Kali, you have an invocation to Kali, for instance. The first track, Astoma Sadgamaya, is also about truth and enlightenment. To talk a little bit about the conception of this album and what made you decide on these 9 tracks.
Well, the album was really, the inception of it was just before the pandemic, and what I realized through making this album is that in our world, we were going through something where we needed to cultivate a lot of strength, especially mentally, internally. And I went through my own personal experience, and it was somewhat mirrored in what I was seeing in the world. And I think you call upon these mantras, you call upon these, manifestations of the divine really is what these mantras are encapsulating and share and like bringing forth within us, right? It's like they're there for us. It's like they're kind of living and breathing vibrational presences. And so that was a very real thing for me. And I think the concept of the album really came about as I was making the music. I never sat there and said, I'm going to make an album that has 9 tracks and it's going to be called this. It was an unfolding of my own experience. So the album is really an extension of what I was experiencing and cultivating myself. And the album title was actually something I talked with the Kali, co-writer for Kali, with Divya Prabha. You know, I asked her, because I respect her so much, and I said, you know, what do I call this? There's this theme of warriors has arisen while I've made these tracks. There seems to be this common theme with Ma Durga and Kali, and then there's Rudra, and then there's Hanuman, and then there's Ram. They all have this theme of the warrior, but they're all these different forms and expressions of this spirit. And I was like, you know, I want to go towards light. And she said, well, how about the warrior of light? And I was like, oh yeah, how about the warriors of light? Because that makes people feel like they're in it. You know, really, the music that I make, I make it as a reflection of what I hope we all can step forward with. And I really do believe that everybody has been called upon to bring that warrior of light within themselves forward.
Right. And would you like to pick some of these tracks that sort of work differently, or sort of that was the making of it was somehow different? For instance, I think I was reading some of the reviews, and people have spoken about, of course, Liberate. They've also talked about the final track called Lokas Masta Suknemo Bhavantu, that is sort of a call for universal peace and happiness.
Mm-hmm. Well, all of them were different. Every single track was different. You'll hear the instrumentation on every track is different, because I wanted a different instrumentalist to kind of feature on each song. The tone and the timbre of each song is different. Because the colors of life are, and we have different challenges and different boundaries to push through. So for instance, you know, with Liberate was on the piano. I sat on the piano one day, and I just felt this kind of collective cry of humanity, just kind of wondering what was happening in the world. You know, there's a line in there that says, do you hear the cries amongst a billion souls? Because I think sometimes, even if we have faith, even if we come from a, say, spiritual path, sometimes things happen in life to make us question. And I think that's being honest. I always want to be honest. I'm, you know, not going to be one of those people who says, oh, you know, you don't have doubts on the path, you're never going to question everything. You should question. You should ask. You should kind of scream from the heart sometimes. You know, Yogananda said once, I think God wants you to yell sometimes, you know, to really know that you want to be close. And I think that at times, yeah, I think I felt that in the collective consciousness. That's why that song is really asking, are you there? The first line of the song is saying, are you there in the corners of the darkness, you know? But then Release Your Fears, Jaya Jaya Durga Ma, that one was started with the drum beat, because I knew that with Ma Durga, you need the dum, right? You have to have the dum when it comes to Ma Durga. And then it took me a year to write the lyrics for that song in English. I knew I wanted to write in English for that song. But how do you take a concept like a Ma Durga, not concept, but an actual manifestation? How do you take her, who is so universal and timeless, and put her in an English lyric, which is relatively new language? It's not as expansive as Sanskrit. How do you describe that? It took me a long time. And one day it was like 1:30 in the morning, and I was doing some kind of internal process, and suddenly it just came together. So every song had its own journey. And I think that it's much like the manifestations of the divine. They all have their own character. So they all respond differently to you. They'll come in different ways. And I'm just very reverential to it. I never forced it. But I always knew it was good, because I would have tears in my eyes. I always knew it was right, you know?
Yeah. No, and one gets that sense while listening to the album. I was, in fact, listening to it on Spotify, and each of these tracks hold something really, really special, something deep, something very reverential, as you said. And another question, Radhika, about you know, this. This, of course, this is the second album, and it's produced, also co-produced with Grammy-nominated George Landris. And what is also amazing about this album is you're not just the vocalist, but also the composer, the lyricist, and the co-producer. So tell us about that process, and the process of, while you are tapping into your Indian roots. That is, your grandparents were Indians, right?
Gujarat, yes.
Right. And but at the same time, it was also a sort of personal journey for you because since childhood you have struggled with that hearing, speech impediment, and so on. It worked on so many levels. And would you like to talk about that?
Well, I think that the whole of my life has felt like a battle. So, like when I was young, I could sing very easily, but there were times I couldn't even say my name. And what that comes with as a child, imagine being in school and not being able to talk. That comes with a lot of challenges, right? So my whole life has felt like I've had to get that little warrior spirit out. And then even, just I think that being an artist and a creative, well, not just being an artist and creative, I think this world does everything it can to exile you from yourself. This world does everything it can to stop you or distract you from being who you were meant to be all along. And a lot of us don't get to remember, or a lot of us have to fight to remember, to stay on the path of what is meant for you. Even social media convinces us to live the lives of others, that's more alluring. So we do have to fight for the truth of who we are. And I've realized that in my life through my own experience. I'm an observer of the world. And I see that much of the suffering that happens in the world is because people simply aren't allowed or even give themselves permission to be who they are. The greatest battle that we have is in the mind. It's what our Vedas talk about, right? It's the battle that we have to win is in here. And I've gone through things in my life, and that's why I think people really resonate with this album, because they know that my voice is an embodiment of truthful experience. I didn't just pick up the mantras and think, oh, this sounds cool, I'm going to put that in a song. That's not what it was for me. Like the Maha Mrityunjaya was something that I would lean on and grab onto in the most difficult times, and it was my anchor, to Rudra, to Shiva. Like I get emotional talking about it because it's a very real thing for me,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And each of these tracks are also in different languages. Like you have Sanskrit, you have Hindi, you also have Tamil, and of course you bring your own spoken word poetry in English to it. And I was just curious to know, what does each language sort of unlock for you, both emotionally and spiritually?
Wow, that's a really good question. No one has asked me that question. Wow. Oh,
Thank you.
wow. No, it's a really good one. Well, English, that's self-evident. But actually, English is the language I had the most trouble speaking.
Right.
Interestingly enough, for me to do a spoken word piece and then to do the spoken word and Release Your Fears was a big deal for me to do that. So that was quite a big thing for me. I also wanted to sing in English because I'm born in the UK, and I wanted to take some opportunity in this album to open it up to people from a different background and help them understand some of the meaning of our ancient wisdom and what this all means. So I thought it would be a beautiful doorway, and it's been really lovely, the response. The Sanskrit, I mean, the mantras and the shlokas that I would listen to as a child and just do naturally, it feels like home to me. Sanskrit is home. It really is. It's a place of total and utter freedom and truth. There's everything becomes fine when you chant these names. The Avadi was interesting because of the longest time, the Hanuman Chalisa, I didn't realize that it was in Avadi. My mother would sing this to me when I was a child, and always sing this with my mom. I still do sing this with my mom. I sometimes FaceTime with my mom from America, and I'm like, Mom, let's do the Chalisa together. And it's so nice, But I had to study the Avadi because I didn't realize the slight differences between the Sanskrit and the Avadi. I didn't realize. So that was really beautiful. That was a kind of a teachable thing for me to decide to record the Chalisa and do that. And the Tamil was a really interesting one because the composition, Aganitha Tara, is about 3,500 years old. And I'm not from South India, but I feel this incredible connection to the South. It's very, very interesting. And the moment I discovered that composition, my friend actually introduced the composition to me. Her family guru was Swami Mabhidananda, and I believe that the original words were written by Sage Agastya. So it was like 3,500 years ago, and there was something about that composition. I'm not kidding you. The moment I heard those lyrics, it wouldn't leave me. Like, it just would not let me go. And so then I studied it. Like, I learned what it meant, and I actually phonetically studied it. And I just hope I did a good enough job of it. But it's so strange. I actually feel in some ways it's like unlocked a bit of a rabbit hole for me in terms of the Tamil. Like, it feels very natural for me to go towards that. And also, I think that South Indian culture, it has so much of the depth of our Indian culture still alive there. I don't know. I just have incredible resonance with it, and I love singing with my South Indian friends.
Lovely. Uh, these tracks are also they appeal to you for, of course, the message in it, but the very fact that they are also urgent in a time like this, when all of us are dealing with so much in our personal lives, professional lives. The world itself is in that kind of, in the throes of some kind of conflict or the other. And that brings me to this element of the overarching message, in a way, of your music. And there's a broader sort of idea about what music should be. So for instance, mantras and these chants have been around for a while, but when you bring it to, for instance, Clubhouse, or to the Grammys, when the album is nominated for the Grammys, or for instance to the video games, what is the secret to to making these chants that are so ancient, very, very urgent in our times?
Well, I believe that these chants they have a path of their own. I don't think we are doing it. They're timeless. They're living. They have their own determination, and they have their own decision. They decide. We don't decide. We think we decide, but we really don't. There's a reason they've been around for such a long time, and there's a reason why there's a resurgence of them now. And one of my teachers, Manju Joyce, said to me once, I did Ashtanga training with him,
Right.
and he said, his father, Shrike, would say, he would say, if there was a choice between your asana practice or mantra, it's mantra every time. Every time, right? We all want something quick in this era. As you said, you used a brilliant word that not many other people have used. There's an urgency. There is an urgency in the way you listen to the album, but it's a reflection of the time. There's an urgency within, I think, our collective consciousness to seek something, because I think our world has been built upon that which is a kind of impressioned perception, but not that which is truthfully apparent. And so I think that mantras have an incredible vibration to smash what is not real.
Right.
It really does smash what is not real, and it reveals what is real. And I think the more that we as a collective consciousness are seeking that, the more the mantras are arriving and appearing to answer that, And it's also a feedback loop. The more we hear them, the more we actually resonate with what is truthful. And then in our day-to-day, we realize what is not. But, I think that for me, the way that I made this album, it wasn't constructed of me going, oh, this album is going to do this for the listener, and it's going to make this person feel this way, and it's going to serve this big thing. I was simply sharing and expressing these practices and these sounds that have loved me and supported me. And it's my way of loving the world. My way of loving the world is sharing what has helped me. And I want to love since I was a child, I just want to love people. And this is the way that I do that. If something has helped me, if something feels good, I'm going to do that. And obviously, with the hybrid of being British and having East African born parents, and in India, now in America, I think that's what gave this this album has a very universal sound and feel. And I'm a hybrid of all of those things culturally. So I'm just really glad that I was able to co-create something with all of the amazing people on this album that feels universal, because these sounds are universal. Every
Right.
human being can respond to them, and so that's it's a beautiful thing.
Right. Right. Music, of course, and it may sound cliche, but music is different things to different people, and some of them it could be about healing. Some of them, what would you say music mean to you? Would you say that as a process of self-discovery, as a process also of healing? What does it mean to you?
Music is oxygen.
Oh wow!
I was hearing music when I was in my mother's belly. It is as old as oxygen for me. It's there. It's all around us all the time. The greatest singers that we all know from India will always say, the notes are there, the music's there. We're just plugging into it. And so it gives me life. There have been times in my life where I didn't sing, and I quite literally felt like I was losing myself. I didn't know who I was. And so for me, it's oxygen. It helps me feel alive. And I think it does that for most people.
Right. One last question, Radhika, and that is, if you could whisper one chant, one mantra into the world's ear right now, what would it be, and why?
If I could whisper one, I'm gonna, I'm gonna be just. I would be very careful doing that with other people, because we have to be careful doing that. But I would say at this time, I would say Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu, because I think that's what all beings really want. We all want peace to all beings everywhere and happiness to all beings everywhere. And if we want that, we must speak that. We must whisper that. Many of us say we want that, but then we don't speak that way. So I think that's the one that I would whisper in someone's ear.
Right. On that note, Radhika, thank you so much for taking the time out. It was such a fascinating conversation. May you continue to heal yourself, discover yourself through music, and also heal the world in the process. Thanks so much indeed.
Thank you so much, Navi. Thank you.
The Federal and City Union Bank jointly present the Tanjavur Marathon 2025 on Sunday, February 23. This event is powered by Sri Kamachi Medical Center and Anandam Silks and organized by Tanjavur District Athletics Association.